So, whatever happened to probably the most classic and beloved science fiction masterpiece in the sci-fi genre, 1951's The Day the Earth Stood Still? Let's find out. Movies,
Music and monsters.
Hey guys, Dan Monroe here talking about movies, music, and monsters. Before we get started, I'd like to thank Squarespace for sponsoring this video, but more on that later. Special thanks to Kelly Mark Delcom, Mike Clark, and the robot man himself, Mr. Fred Barton, for supplying a ton of information and photos about this film that I now get to share with all of you guys. Oh, The Day the Earth Stood Still, probably the #1 sci-fi movie that really, in my opinion, started it all. This classic masterpiece is not only one of the very first films that truly launched the sci-fi genre into the hearts and minds of Hollywood studios and audiences all over the world, but surprisingly still has quite a potent and important lesson that all of us, even today, should be paying attention to. And on top of all that, has an unbelievable backstory of its own. So, sit back, relax, grab your favorite 7-foot-tall aggression-eliminating robot policeman and a bucket of stale popcorn, and let's dive in. Producer Julian Blaustein initially had plans to make this film under several different titles, including Farewell to the Master, which is essentially where the concept of this entire film originated from, but in the end, after Daryl Zanuck, who was the studio head at the time, gave the go-ahead for this project, Julian Blaustein hired a guy named Edmund North to write the screenplay, which was based, again, primarily on the 1940 short story Farewell to the Master, written by Harry Bates. The cast of this film was nothing less than out of this world, with film and television veteran Michael Rennie as Klaatu, Patricia Neal as Helen Benson, Hugh Marlowe as Helen's somewhat antagonistic boyfriend, the amazing Sam Jaffe as Professor Barnhart, little Billy Gray as Bobby Benson, who was just terrific in the part, and an extremely tall gentleman named Locke Martin as GORT. Michael Rennie was originally cast as the lead role, mostly because he was generally unknown to American audiences, and I guess they thought he'd be seen more as an alien than a recognizable actor. Now, originally, studio head Daryl Zanuck offered the part to both Claude Rains and then to Spencer Tracy, who was very eager to play the part, but Blaustein said no way, so Michael Rennie it is. GORT, such an amazingly iconic sci-fi robot, one of those characters that the moment you see it, you know exactly what it is and where it came from. There is a ton of information about GORT that's not only extremely fascinating, the actor, the construction, and especially where GORT eventually ended up. Well, luckily I already did an enormous deep dive all about that, specifically what happened to GORT from The Day the Earth Stood Still. It's a super cool watch, so check it out. Link in the description. The Day the Earth Stood Still was directed by legendary American filmmaker Robert Wise, who was, and is, best known for some of the greatest masterpieces in cinematic history like West Side Story, The Sound of Music, The Andromeda Strain, and Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
I was under contract to 20th Century Fox Studios, and I got a call from Daryl Zanuck, and he said, you should go see Julian Blaustein, the producer here. He's got a script I think is very interesting, and I think it might be something that you'd like. And he handed me a copy of The Day the Earth Stood Still. I thought it was a marvelous way to tell a science fiction film. I liked so much about what it had to say.
This is wild, and I didn't even know this, but he was also personally nominated in the category of Best Film Editing for Citizen Kane. The screenplay for the now titled Day the Earth Stood Still was completed on February 21st, 1951, and shooting literally began like only 2 months later on April 9th on the 20th Century Fox sound stages and backlots, with a second unit shooting background scenes in Washington, D.C. and Fort George G. Meade Army Installation located in Maryland. The amazing set of the ship, which was initially designed by Thomas Little and Claude Carpenter, was so freaking cool and, oddly enough, shaped like a literal flying saucer, which was certainly indicative of the mindset of the audience at the time. Little and Carpenter even collaborated with highly renowned American architect, designer, and writer Frank Lloyd Wright for the final design of the spacecraft. It's really amazing when you watch the shots of the ramp going up into the ship and the door closes and all the seams just disappear. Very cool. But how did they do that? Well, to make the gaps in the ship look seamless, all the cracks around the doors were filled in with a very thin layer of putty and then painted over so that when the doors opened, the putty was torn apart, making the door seemed to appear from nowhere. Then, when the footage was reversed, it looked like the door closed and seamlessly disappeared. God, I love old school practical effect filmmaking. Just check out this amazing production photo of the full-size saucer, literally still under construction. The shooting schedule for the film was really rather short, from April 9th only to May 23rd, 1951, and this is interesting. None of the primary actors ever even traveled to Washington to shoot scenes for the film. According to director Robert Wise, the United States Department of Defense refused participation of any kind in the film after someone from the Defense Department read the script. You know, that's really kind of strange. Just a few years after the highly controversial Roswell incident, the United States Department of Defense refuses any cooperation with a movie about flying saucers. All of the military equipment in the film, however, came from the 3rd Armored Cavalry Regiment, which was then stationed at Fort Meade, which supplied all the vehicles, equipment, and even the soldiers as actors in the film. This is really kind of bizarre and, quite frankly, almost unbelievable, but keep in mind that this was the 1950s. The film censors from the Motion Picture Association of America at 20th Century Fox really had major problems with the plot point that Klaatu was shot and killed and was then resurrected. They only allowed this plot point to remain in the film after insisting that a line was added to the script where Klaatu explains that the power of life and death is only reserved to the Almighty Spirit. Wow, life in the 1950s. It's kind of cool. The weird equations that you can see on Professor Barnhart's blackboard are actually real physics that describe a particular form of the famous three-body problem in Newtonian gravitation, which still, apparently, to this day has no real solution. Well, until Klaatu figured it out, of course. There is no way to discuss this film without mentioning the incredible musical score composed by Bernard Herrmann, which was actually the very first film score he ever composed after moving from New York to Hollywood. He chose very unusual instruments for the film, including the signature sound of the theremin, which certainly set this film's soundtrack way apart from other productions at the time, at least as far as the musical soundtrack goes. Almost all of the music from The Day the Earth Stood Still was edited into the original Lost in Space pilot, No Place to Hide, in 1965, and we also heard segments of this score extensively in Irwin Allen's Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea TV series. Interesting, another one of Hollywood's very famous composers, Danny Elfman, frequently claimed that the score from The Day the Earth Stood Still was so important to him that it actually inspired his initial interest in composing film scores. You know, I'm pretty sure that if a race of 7-foot-tall peacekeeping robots was around today, they would probably use the internet with some really cool website to keep track of everything that's going on in the universe. And, well, if you've ever thought about it, you can do exactly the same thing with today's sponsor, Squarespace. If you've ever thought about it, you know, having your own website to promote a brand, sell a product, anything really, well, Squarespace is a freaking awesome company to help you do just that. Super quick, super simple. One thing that makes it so easy is a brand new guided design system called Squarespace Blueprint. You can choose from super professional looking layouts, then personalize them to your own needs, automatically optimized for every device. And if you're selling something, it's even easier, with tons of really powerful payment tools where you can accept credit cards, PayPal, Apple Pay, making checkout seamless and simple. You can upload your own video content to your own video library, sell exclusive content like memberships, courses, music, or ebooks, purchase the domain and launch your very own website all in no time, all in one place. It's super simple, super convenient. Simply check out squarespace.com for a free trial, and even better, you can save 10% off your first purchase of a domain or website by visiting squarespace.com/Dan Monroe. And now, back to The Day the Earth Stood Still. Now, as far as the box office was concerned, surprisingly, The Day the Earth Stood Still was only moderately successful when it hit theaters, bringing in about $1.8 million, making it only the 52nd biggest box office film of that year. Critically, the film did extremely well, even praised by Variety, claiming, get ready, and I quote, "The yarn is told interestingly enough, with sufficient sci-fi lures and suspense, so that only seldom does its moralistic wordiness get in the way." Well, okay then. On the flip side, the New York Times, of course, completely dismissed the film as tepid entertainment and even had the nerve to describe GORT as oddly non-menacing. God, critics. Well, The Day the Earth Stood Still came and The Day the Earth Stood Still went, but that certainly wasn't the end of this unbelievably fantastic sci-fi classic. In 1962, footage of the flying saucer was used in an episode of The Twilight Zone to serve man. In 1973, the Marvel Comics Group produced an issue of Worlds Unknown, featuring an adaptation based on The Day the Earth Stood Still. The film received recognition from the American Film Institute and was selected for preservation in the United States Library of Congress National Film Registry in 2001, and in 2008, the American Film Institute ranked this film in its top 10 list of best American classic films in the genre. Legendary British writer Arthur C. Clarke places the film in his personal list of the best science fiction films of all time. Well, I guess the people at the New York Times had a bit of a change of heart in 2004 when they selected the film as one of the best movies ever made. Kinda cool, legendary drummer and ex-Beatle Ringo Starr reminded people of this film in 1974 when he used a concept of the film for his album Good Night Vienna. And the film certainly made its mark on pop culture. In the 1987 film Evil Dead 2, the phrase Klaatu Barada Nikto was used in the final scene by Ash as a way to try to close the portal. Again, the Ash character must recite this phrase in order to safely retrieve the Necronomicon in 1992's Army of Darkness, and even in the 1983 film Return of the Jedi, there are 3 characters aboard Jabba's skiff named, you guessed it, Klaatu, Barada, and Nikto. And by the way, just in case anyone is wondering, according to director Robert Wise, those were just made-up gibberish words that in reality meant nothing. Okay, but what about all the super cool costumes, props, and robots from the film? Well, like I said, I already did an enormous deep dive video all about what happened to GORT, which you can check out from the link in the description. As far as the costumes go, well, this is really quite amazing. The spacesuit worn by Michael Rennie at the beginning and the end of this film miraculously does still exist. Now, I wasn't able to get any current photos of it today, but I do know it's currently in a private collection, and even more unusual is that unlike what we always thought, because the film was black and white, the spacesuit wasn't silver. It was lime green. And then there's the incredible flying saucer. Okay, guys, buckle up. This is awesome. Now, there were at least 2 different miniature flying saucers made for the film, one extremely large one and one that was slightly smaller, and this is so cool. Both versions of the saucer were used for a first season episode of Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea called The Sky is Falling, filmed at Sursen Lake. The larger ship was seen crashing into the water, and the smaller ship was used underwater. The smaller of the 2 miniatures does certainly still exist, currently in the collection of legendary collector Bob Burns. And as far as the larger one, well, here it is in all of its outstanding, amazing, out-of-this-world glory. This extremely large miniature is composed mostly of fiberglass, painted silver with a small triangular opening cut along one side of the dome. This 1/24th scale saucer was initially conceived by art directors Lyle Wheeler and Addison Hare and constructed by L.B. Abbott along with Ray Kellogg and Emil Kosa for the production of the film. This incredible ship was eventually rescued from 20th Century Fox by master model maker Greg Jean, beautifully restored and exhibited on display at Disney MGM Studios in Orlando, Florida, until about 2023, where it then appeared in a Profiles in History auction, and then just recently at Julien's auctions, selling for $26,000. How cool is that? Unbelievable prop, unbelievable story, unbelievable that it still exists today. Okay, but what about all the remakes, reboots, and God help us, reimaginings? Well, there was certainly one of those. In 2008, 20th Century Fox released, I guess, what you would call an extremely CGI-heavy reimagining of this film, starring Keanu Reeves, and again, I am not one of those guys who is going to endlessly bash any film because I'm sure there are people out there who liked it, but let's just say that I personally thought it was, how can I say it, slightly less than stellar. On a very cool side note, if anybody out there wants to own their very own personal 7-foot GORT, well, you can. Just visit the website of Fred Barton, the Robot Man, and check out all the super cool classic sci-fi stuff he's got to offer. Again, link in the description. Hey guys, real quick shout out. You've all seen those unbelievably fantastic graphics and animated characters from the beginning and endings of my episodes. Well, those are all created individually by hand by the amazing Bill Hughes from his own company, Wonder Vision Studios, and this guy creates some of the coolest animation and live-action stuff in his MERCURY series, which is also right here on YouTube. I've got a link in the description. Definitely check out his stuff. It's not only extremely well done, but also super fun to watch. The Day the Earth Stood Still was initially released on VHS and Laserdisc way back in the 1980s and 90s, DVD in 2003, and finally on gorgeous Blu-ray with stunning high definition in 2008. The Day the Earth Stood Still is not only one of the most magnificent examples of early science fiction classics from the genre, but also proved to both the studios and the audiences that futuristic storytelling of this quality was not only lucrative but very popular with moviegoers of the day, paving the way for such incredible sci-fi classics like Forbidden Planet, Planet of the Apes, The Time Machine, 2001: A Space Odyssey, Fantastic Voyage, Quatermass in the Pit, Robinson Crusoe on Mars, The First Men in the Moon, and so many more. We could be here all day, but that, my friends, is the topic of another video. I really hope you guys enjoyed that deep dive on The Day the Earth Stood Still, and if you did, and you like this kind of stuff, please consider subscribing to the channel. I've got a whole bunch of new videos coming up really soon that I know you guys are just gonna dig. And please feel free to stop back anytime as we, together, continue our conversation on movies, music, and monsters. Movies,
Music and monsters.